Hey everybody, how's it going? We're gonna jump into our last unit here, which is ecology. So there's about 4 sets of notes with ecology, and we will be digging into those over the next few days. Um, what else? What else? So you can think of ecology as kind of it's almost the unit that pulls everything together from the year. We're gonna be referencing the evolution stuff a lot. We're gonna reference genetics. And this all goes hand in hand, how organisms operate and how their behavior is, and then how things interact and all of ecology. So now we're finally getting back out of the cell. We've been inside the cell since like beginning of October, right? Because once we got done with evolution, we went into cells and then metabolism and then all the genetics. So now we're coming back out into bigger life, and the topics will feel bigger and probably a little bit lighter. They aren't going to be as so detailed. It'll feel a lot like the evolution unit where there's lots of terms and examples and how to apply them and reading of data and stuff like that. So that's kind of what you should expect as we go through here. Um, so let's get started. We are looking at one level of ecology today, which is called just the organism, looking at an individual organism. And my slideshow is not going forward. Hang on one second. There we go. It finally caught up. Guess I clicked the button a few times. Sorry about that. Here we go. Ecology, study of interactions between organisms and their environments. That's probably not surprising to you. You guys have done ecology and regular bio before. So you probably were aware that it was about all these interactions and that these interactions have levels. You guys probably learned those levels also. I told you today we were looking at organism. Once you look at an organism, then you look at a group of organisms, which we call population. And then after that, you look at populations that interact together, and that's called a community. And then once you have a community and all those interacting populations, you have to look at the abiotic factors in that ecosystem as well. And that is going to be the level of ecosystem, right? And so one level of organization emerges from the processes of the level below it. So there's that word emergence again. Remember that word from the beginning of the year? So here's where we are. We're studying organism, once highlighted in red, population, community, ecosystem, biome, and biosphere. Looks like it got cut off a little bit there at the bottom, but those other words would be ecosystem, biome, and biosphere with the planet there. So big question, why do organisms behave the way they do? So we're going to look at why organisms kind of do what they do today and what are the reasons for that. And so a couple reminders heading in, you have some biotic factors and some abiotic factors that are going to play roles in this. Biotic factors being living things, right? These are things like predator-prey relationships, competition for food, competition for mates, competition for shelter, all sorts of interactions between organisms. Obviously, reproduction, organisms, herbivory, interactions between animals and plants, right? And so then you have abiotic factors, non-living things that can affect an organism. For some reason, all my students always say rocks is the first one. While rock does qualify as an abiotic factor, I don't know why it would be at the top of your brain when there are things like sunlight and soil and temperature, pH, so many different things, wind, air pressure, water, like just tons of different things to go through in abiotic factors that living things deal with. So if we look at an organism's behavior, we're really looking at what an organism does and why it does it. And we call the study of animal behavior ethology. And lots of scientists study one organism in particular, like their whole life. They only study chimps, or they only study, white-tailed deer, or whatever it might be. And then that's how we get to have experts on all of these organisms and build up our information about all of them. Couple terms for you: proximate cause, ultimate cause. Proximate cause is how. How does the behavior occur? How does the biology work? How does the physiology work that contributes to all of these behaviors? And then the ultimate cause is just why. And when you think about why all these behaviors happen, they generally kind of come back to, overall fitness and reproductive success. So it's basically back to natural selection, right? Survive and reproduce, survive and reproduce. That's what organisms want to do. Okay, but when we talk about proximate cause, it's about how something happens. When we talk about ultimate cause, it's about why something happens. So communication is a big part of behavior. Signals have to be sent, messages received, lots of reasons to communicate, defining territories, maintaining contact with offspring, courtship, establishing dominance, all sorts of reasons, right? Signals can be chemical, they can also be symbolic. One chemical signal might be a pheromone. Pheromones are there to attract mates or mark territory, help recruit other organisms to do a particular function or behavior. Um, so this little example here, if you look at the minnows in the tank right here, they're all kind of spread out, swimming, minding their own business, having a good time. But then when you put the pheromone, if you look at the bottom one, they put the pheromone from one of their predators in the tank. Look where they all go. They all duck and cover, right? They're all in the corner huddling together for safety. And the predator's not even there. It's just the pheromone. So they can be really strong, send really strong messages. So symbolic signals as well. Auditory, things like mating calls, warning calls, calls for help, all sorts of things. Visual, courtship, mimicry, like in fireflies or lots of other organisms have mimicry. We're going to talk about that more on another day. Size matters. We're going to talk about that longhorn beetle on another day as well. But there are visual cues to organisms for communication. Tactile. This is how things like bond or potentially like a mating ritual dance, which, and also to get, in this case, to get food. So the bees have something called a waggle dance, and I'm going to post that video. I can't really show it to you right now, but I will post that video for you to check out. It's pretty crazy to know that bees have this little way of waggling and wiggling in front of other bees to indicate where the food is. We need to go 60 degrees to the right of the sun in order to go get food. Like, check that video out. It's pretty crazy. I always want to know after I watch that video, like, how did the first bee or the third bee or the 10th bee or whatever, how did they know that the waggle meant that? Like, that just kind of blows my mind that the bees figured out this system. Pretty crazy. Okay, two big types of behaviors, two big categories of behaviors. We have innate, which is under genetic control. These are the things you're born knowing how to do. No one has to teach you. No one has to teach a baby how to suckle for food. Okay, any mammal out in the wild knows how to get milk from their mom. They don't have to be taught. They just know how to do that. It's under genetic control. Other things are learned. Other things requires experience. Okay, and we'll look at both of these. So one simple innate type of learning here is a fixed action pattern. So behaviors triggered by a stimulus. So a stimulus is going to trigger a pattern, and even when that stimulus is removed, the pattern's going to continue, and they can't stop. So in this case, an egg gets out from under the goose. Maybe one rolls away when she was repositioning. So that's the trigger. The goose is going to get up, stretch her neck out, and she's going to kind of roll the egg back into her pile. So scientists wanted to see what the deal was with this. So they have a little fake egg, and they put a fake egg out in front of her. And of course, she gets up and she goes out and she scrapes the egg back. So then they do it again. They put the fake egg back out there, and the goose puts her neck out. And as soon as she goes to do it, the scientists pull the egg. They take the egg back, and the goose still keeps moving its neck and pulling it back like it was pulling an egg back, even though there was no egg there. The goose was just doing this in the air. So if you put the stimulus out there in front of the goose, she's going to go through the same pattern no matter if the egg is there or not. It's just once the stimulus is there, then this is the trigger to complete the pattern. There's no way that goose can stop itself from doing this. Okay? So it's a fixed action pattern. Another simple innate one, you see this fish down the bottom. That fish is called a stickleback. It's a famous kind of research project that was done. They're pretty aggressive, the sticklebacks, toward each other even. And so they put a fake stickleback in the tank. You can see the top picture there. where it looks exactly like a stickleback, other than the colors are not they're not there. It's just a gray one. And the real stickleback completely ignored the model, didn't care about it at all. Then they put things in there which don't even look like fish, right? They just put some shapes in there with an eyeball and a little bit of red on the bottom, and the fish attacked every single one of them. So it wasn't the shape, it wasn't anything. It had to be the red on the bottom. And so that's just something that's innate in that stickleback. When they see red on the bottom of another organism, they're going to attack it. They're going to try and go after it. This is another video, another clip, and I will post this one as well. Keep in mind it's rated R because, you might see some flies, doing their mating ritual. And so pay attention to the credits, though. The credits are pretty funny. So really complex, though. This is a complex innate. No one teaches them how to do their mating ritual, but it's pretty complex movements actually that go into all of this. And these are the Drosophila, remember, are your fruit flies. Okay. So again, I will post that video. It's just kind of a silly little video, but check it out. All right, moving on to learned types of behaviors. There are 5 learned behaviors. Number 1 is imprinting. So the young organisms go through a critical period. So really soon after they're born, they imprint on whatever is in front of them, whoever's in front of them, usually their mom or their dad or both, their parents. And so they kind of do what they do, and they start following the behavior of that organism. You can see the geese here in the upper right. They always follow whatever the mom and dad are doing. They swim when it's time to swim. They feed when it's time to feed. They rest. They, lay up on the land. They do what the older ones are doing, but it's because they imprinted on their adult figure, I guess you want to say, right away. So the guy on the left down here, he took away the mother goose or the mother duck right away, and so the little ducklings imprinted on him. So everywhere he goes, they go. And this guy down here in the corner, he's even flying around in a copter and got the birds to follow him, which is pretty crazy to think of. Imprinting is close to another one that I'm going to show you in a minute, so pay attention when I get to that one, and I'll tell you the difference. Cognitive, most complex by far. This is really problem solving. This is using a lot of reasoning and all your mental faculties to accomplish a task. So you see this chimp is in a room with some boxes and some bananas, and he can't reach the bananas. He really wants the bananas, so he figures out, hey, if I stack up these boxes, then I can get the bananas. So no one taught him that. That's just the behavior that he was able to figure out using his brain and everything he knows about the situation. And so that's a really complex thing to be able to do. Associative, this is just connecting one environmental factor to another. So you want some food if you're the blue jay, and he's going to go eat a monarch butterfly. The problem is they are not very good for the blue jays, and so now you see the blue jay vomiting over here. So do you think he'll ever go after another monarch again? Probably not. This is also why a lot of other butterflies that are not monarchs look like monarchs. There's lots of orange and black butterflies that are not poisonous to birds, and so that's how they mimic it, and they get to not be eaten. Social. This is the one that sometimes people confuse with imprinting, because this is also about the older individuals in the group or the elders teaching the young ones. But this is more, it's a longer process in imprinting. Imprinting is like at birth. It's like the first thing that they see and they notice. This one, it might be your parents, but it also might be other elders in the group. And it's more of a longer process. And it's kind of through your juvenile stages that you continue to learn. And so imprinting is just really right there, that 1 or 2 adults that you fix on right at birth, where social is more like learning from the group as a whole and over a longer period of time by watching your elders. Spatial, being able to learn from your physical environment. And so this experiment here, you're looking at the wasp, and in the top one up here, if we look at this one, here's the nest right here. The nest is right here in the middle. and scientists place these pine cones around the nest. And so the wasp is, looking here, and they're able to go in and find their nest. And so when you look down here at the second one, after the wasp leaves, the scientists do something a little bit cruel, and they move the pine cones. They move the pine cones away from the nest. The nest is still over here, but they move the pine cones. And look what happens to the wasp. He comes back and he's, hovering over the pine cones, and he's looking for his nest, but he can't find it, and he can't find it. And so they're like, well, maybe it's the smell of the pine cones, and it's not the pine cones themselves. So again, the wasp leaves, and they move the pine cones over here, and then they put in some cardboard squares with some scented material that's like the pine cones, and they want to see if the wasp can find it here. But what's the wasp doing? He's still over here. He's still zipping around the pine cones. He doesn't care about the smell. It wasn't the smell, it's the pine cones themselves that are the indicator for them to find their nest. So they're using landmarks. They're navigating using these beacons or landmarks in order to figure out where to go. So pretty cool thing. So innate versus learned, just a quick question here, kind of some rhetorical type questions. Should they be considered separate? Why or why not? And then just kind of a little practice question for you to go back through them and look for maybe proximate and ultimate causes for those examples we just discussed. But back to the first one, do you think innate and learned are really separate, or do you think they work together somehow? And this really kind of goes back to the age-old argument of nature versus nurture, right? Are we only what our DNA says we are, or does the environment play a role as well? And generally, in most cases, you will find that both of them play a role, right? The genetics definitely play a role as far as development and innate behaviors and things like that, but we need to learn as well, and we have learned behaviors, and the environment that we're in plays a role for sure. There's lots of studies on twins, right, that were separated at birth, and maybe one was in a very good situation where they had money and they had a lot of advantages, and the other twin was in a very different situation where maybe it was more of a poverty situation, and you look and see like they have the same genetics, but what would those different environments do for you? And there's some pretty good studies on that. Those are more down the roads of psychology, but same idea as far as what we're talking about here. Behavior can evolve. We're going to use a little migration pattern to look at how this might be. So a couple of terms for you. As far as migration is concerned, you have piloting, which is using the landmarks as beacons, kind of like what the wasps were doing. Orientation is the ability to follow a compass, basically, and travel in a straight line. And navigation is just like orientation, but you're able to course correct. You're able to, if you do get blown 100 miles off course, can you get back? And so let's look at this little experiment they did. Grab a pen here. So up here in Scandinavia, this is their normal breeding range for these birds. And so typically they're going to fly south for the winter range, and they're going to fly in a straight line down south, and they're going to winter here in England and right here in France. This is their winter range. And so what scientists did is when they landed in the Netherlands to rest, they captured a few and they moved them way over here to France. And they put some of the birds way over here. And then when they were released, you have two things that happened. You have some birds that flew in a straight line, which is parallel to this line, right? They just kept going in the exact same direction. Then you have another set of birds that came back over here, and they went to the normal grounds. Well, the older birds, the more mature birds, were able to course correct. They are able to navigate and go back to where they're supposed to go. The younger birds, the young starlings, were not able to course correct, and they just kept flying in a straight line, and they ended up in Spain. And so because the older birds can do this and the younger birds can't, that means at some point they learn how to do this. They learn how to navigate and course correct and get back. Pretty cool thing. Another kind of example here is optimal foraging. The best way I can explain this is getting the best bang for your buck. So obtaining the most energy possible with the least expenditure of energy. So if you look at our crab here and you look at the muscles, and I'm sorry that the bottom of these images keep getting cut off, but these are the sizes of the muscles going across the bottom. So you can kind of read there. It goes from like 1 to 4 centimeters, um, I think is the unit. I can't remember, but centimeters or inches or something. And what is the crab doing? Like, what are they really going for? So these blue bars are indicating the percent of the diet. So clearly they are going for more of the middle-sized mussels. And that makes sense, right? Because you would have to spend a whole lot of energy cracking open the bigger ones because they're stronger and have harder shells. And so you'd spend a lot of energy trying to get the bigger ones open. The little ones you can open pretty easy, but you'd have to get a ton of them to make up for not having enough food in each one. So the middle ones give you enough food and don't take a whole lot of energy to go for. And so remember this, you should be able to apply a term for from evolution for this as well. Do you remember what type of selection this would be? Do you remember the term stabilizing selection, where they're going for the one in the middle? Okay, so they're going to be very related. A lot of the topics we talk about now and evolution. If we look at more behavior and we look at fitness, if you're talking fitness, you have to talk about reproductive success. And mating systems influence sexual dimorphism as well, another word from our evolution unit. Remember, sexual dimorphism is being able to physically look at a male and female and tell the difference. Certainly in the second and third picture, we can do that, right? Bucks have the big antlers. And in the third picture there, one spider is definitely way bigger than the other. So do you guys know these words here? Monogamous, polygynous, and polyandrous. So if you're in a monogamous mating system or monogamous relationship, that's one mate and it's mate for life. So bald eagles do this. A pair of bald eagles will mate for life and they will stay together their whole lives. Then you have the deer, and the deer are not that way. The deer are polygynous, meaning the buck is going to have um, many it's going to reproduce with many females is what I want to say. And so the female will then end up having to probably give more parental care, and I'll talk about that in a second. On the other one over here, polyandrous, it's just the reverse. The female is actually the big one here, and the male is the little one. So in this case, the female is going to have many mates with that one. Another couple of terms, just reminders. Remember intersexual selection and intrasexual selection. So with the first one there, members of one sex, usually female, are going to choose. Remember, that's the one that causes showy males, right? The intersexual selection is when the males get all the bright colors and they're trying to attract the female because it's female choice. And intrasexual selection, this is basically where the males are duking it out to try and win the female. Okay, so the competition is to show dominance and win the female. Parental care, I mentioned that a second ago. Mating systems are really influenced by parental care. Well, mom, dad, or both care for the young. Go back to these systems. In a monogamous, do you think that's like who's going to care for the young in a monogamous situation and polygynous and polyandrous, because they're not all the same? Monogamous, you would hopefully assume that both parents will actually care. There's a good amount of parental care and both parents will chip in and do their part. With polygynous, clearly the female is going to be giving the parental care because the male's already out probably mating with another female, and he's just there to try and increase the numbers of the species, but he's not going to spend a lot of time caring about raising the young. And the opposite would be true for the spiders in the polyandrous situation. If we go back here, also remember, like it shows a fish here with a bunch of eggs in its mouth. In this case, there is some parental care, but a lot of fish, they just lay eggs and move on. Like, we're going to have a lot of offspring. Not all of you are going to make it, so good luck. But, enough of you will make it that our species will continue. But you're pretty much on your own, right? Many species that lay, when they lay, tens or hundreds of eggs, there's not a lot of parental care going on. It's just survival by numbers type thing. Altruism. This is any behavior that increases the fitness of the group while decreasing the fitness of that organism exhibiting the behavior. So um, think of an example of that. When would it be that an organism decreases its fitness while it improves the fitness of the group? And there's several examples of this. Um, uh, Warning calls. Warning calls would be one, right? There's a predator in the area, and everyone might be hunkered down, and then one of the organisms in the group notices the predator, and you have to alert everyone, right? So the organism gives out the warning call, but then you're giving away your position, and the predator's probably coming for you, which decreases your fitness, right? So should this happen in a world with natural selection? How can this be explained? Well, in one way, yes, and in one way, no, right? Like an organism kind of purposely decreasing the fitness of itself kind of goes against natural selection. But the goal for natural selection is really not for any one individual, right? It's to keep the species going. Survive and reproduce, to keep the species going. So it does help that you have this warning call or whatever. Even though you may lose one, you'll protect the many, right? And this happens in humans actually quite a bit, right? And so one good example is the military. So you guys all know the phrase like to fall on the grenade, right? Basically to take one for the team. Soldiers, when there's a grenade thrown in there, there's been many a soldier that jump on the grenade, which they know is going to kill them, but it will contain the blast, so the rest of their team will live. So that's a pretty extreme example, but it happens all the time. Relatedness. So this altruistic behavior is basically shown way more in organisms that feel connected, right? Organisms that live in families, they live in groups. And this quote down here at the bottom is just kind of funny. Anything that increases survival of an organism's genes, even if it isn't the organism. That's what we're talking about with inclusive fitness. And then here's the quote: I will lay down my life for 2 siblings or 8 cousins, because genetically, like allele wise, it works out to be about the same. Whether it's 2 siblings or 8 cousins, then they will get to pass on those traits. So just kind of a picture of, what sounding the alert might look like up here in the upper left. And then other naked mole rats would protect the queen with their lives. That's altruistic behavior. And then if you look over here at the graph on the right, you have the mean distance moved from birthplace for these prairie dogs. And you have the red line for the female and the blue line for the male, and then their age in months. So no matter how old the female is, they don't really go far from home. The females stay really close to home. The males tend to venture out more and more as they get older. They push away farther and farther. The females stay close because they are a community and they're going to help each other. They're going to display those altruistic behaviors to help them all survive. So females are going to stay a little bit closer. Males probably go out a little bit further, maybe to look for new territory or better resources for the group. Okay. And that is all. There's your questions. I will get the slides posted. I will get this video posted for you, as well as the next few videos coming as well. Hope you have a great day. See ya.